Hey guys, today we want to talk all about disability insurance. Is this actually something that you need in your plan, or is that just something that we can pass on? But if this is your first time joining us, welcome. My name is Michael Foley. I'm a certified financial planner and student loan professional, and I'm also the son of two doctors. And the goal with Lifestyle Creep is to help healthcare workers and their families, really get more intentional in their finances and hopefully inspire them to live more humble and quiet lives. But today, let's talk about disability insurance. Is this actually something that we need? I know everyone's probably blown you up that you need disability insurance, especially if you're a physician or a dentist or some sort of healthcare worker, that, what you do is a very specific skill set. But is it actually something that we need? And so I wanted to break it down a little bit and talk about some of the stats and some good questions to ask as you're going through that kind of conversation in your financial plan. So one of the first thing that we want to look at is, okay, what is the prevalence of a disability in our healthcare workers, right? So according to the CDC, they find that just over 1 in 4 adults will have some sort of disability throughout their career, and so that ended up being like 27%. So that's a huge number, right? A lot of times there are some physicians or other healthcare workers that maybe don't use their hand. They're not a surgeon. We don't use their hands, or not a lot of hands-on patient care, and so they say, well, I'm a safe person. I'm probably not going to have. I'm not rock climbing, I'm not dirt biking, right? I'm not going to have something happen. But the interesting thing is that when we actually broke it down, the Guardian did a study on it, showed all of the claims that they have on their disability insurance policies. 90% of the claims were not from actual injuries. That was only 10%. 90% were for actual illnesses that developed throughout your life. So I just found that fascinating, that you think that, oh, well, I can be a safe person, but sometimes we don't know what's in store for us, and so sometimes these illnesses come up. Maybe it's some sort of chronic pain, maybe it's a cancer. There's a variety of different illnesses that could come up that could disable you. But we need to factor that into the equation too, regardless if you are doing hands-on patient care or doing surgery or things like that. So just a big thing that we got to be looking at. So just some interesting stats that we're looking at, but. Now let's talk about some questions to ask. Do we actually need this in our plan or not? And so the first thing is, we always, in a financial plan, we got to look at and ask the question, what would happen if we had an event that were to happen that disabled you, we didn't have an income, do we have a backup plan? And what is that backup plan? And is that something that is going to be playable in your finances, right? So, there are some people that maybe have family money or would, maybe go back, home if they're, from another country or something like that, they would have family support. And, maybe the disability insurance isn't as much of a need in their situation. However, if our answer to that question of, what would happen if, and we don't, maybe we're the primary breadwinner of our family, or maybe we provide a good chunk of our income for our household, that we wouldn't be able to make bills and make our household expenses if we didn't have our income. If we don't have an adequate backup plan, we need to outsource that risk to an insurance company, right? And so that's what disability insurance is for. It's not cheap, and there's a reason for it, because there's a good benefit that would be coming to you in your plan if that were to be the case. So that's something that we gotta back up. But the goal with it is to not just pay money on our disability insurance forever. The goal is to build up your own nest egg so that we can have enough, so that if there was a disabling event or something, hopefully we'll have enough in our savings and that we can provide for your household without needing to lean on the insurance company. So we can, what we call, self-insure at that certain point. So really the goal is just this is kind of a band-aid for a period of time while we're building our assets, but this is not the answer to our plan, right? So we want to use that and keep that in consideration, okay? So do we have a backup plan? That's question number 1. So question number 2 is, do we have the right type of disability insurance in place? I think that's another big one that a lot of people overlook, is sometimes people think it's just a yes or a no conversation, right? Do you either have disability insurance or you don't? But it is critical to understand that all disability insurance is not created equal. And so the way that you kind of, you're going to want to sort through this is looking at how do they define you being disabled in the contract language of the policy. So they call that the definitional language. So what is that definitional language? And so on an individual policy, you get to choose whatever level of coverage you want. But most of our healthcare, almost all of our healthcare workers, their families, we're going to want what we call the highest level of disability language, which is called true own occupation definitional language. So what that says is if you can't do the material and substantial duties of your specified occupation in which you're doing at the time of disability, they have to pay you. Period. Right? So if you are a surgeon, you hurt your hand and you can't operate anymore, but maybe you can go and just teach or maybe help with the residents or do something else. Great. That's something different than you were doing at the time of the disability, so they have to pay you. So that's the level of coverage that we want. Some of these group policies that you might have through your employer are what we call some sort of lesser definitional language oftentimes, and some of them are even the lowest, which is called any occupation. And so that says that you have if you can prove that you can't work in any occupation, then they'll pay out. So that means that you have to prove that there is no job in our society that you would be able to hold. And if they can prove that you can hold a job, even if it's just a Walmart greeter, right, just sitting in a chair waving at people, if they can prove that you can do that, they have an out to not pay that policy. So it's oftentimes not even worth the paper it's written on. So the type of policy, and so knowing, do I have the right type of coverage, or am I looking at the right type of coverage so that we can actually count on this in the plan? Because if we have something lesser than true own occupation, this is not something that, as a planner, we're going to really want to lean on, because this is, obviously we have this for a reason, and we want to make sure that we have this is a good backup plan for us, okay? So that brings us to the last question that we want to ask is, do you have any health concerns? Because before you go and apply for disability insurance, it's really important to talk with your advisor about, any sort of health concerns that you might have, just because a lot of the times when you're applying for disability insurance, you're going to have to prove that you're healthy and that you're insurable. And so given that, there's such a high prevalence of these, policy of people getting disabled in our healthcare workers, and there's a really tight legal definitional language around some of these policies, there's a lot of risk for these carriers to potentially having to be paying out millions of dollars over decades of period of time, right? And so they're very, very critical in who they allow to get coverage and who they do not. So if you do have some health concerns, please make sure that we're doing what we call a medical prelim. And so this is something that we take our clients through, and we can run it by all of the different carriers and say, hey, hypothetically speaking, if we have a male age 34, applying in this specialty, how would you look at them and if they had these health concerns before we actually apply? So once you apply and we get if they decline you, or if they exclude, sometimes they'll exclude certain things. So if you had like a knee injury, they'll say, hey, we'll cover everything but your left knee in coverage, right? They do exclusions like that. But once you get something like that, that's on your permanent record. So anytime we apply elsewhere, we're going to have to denote that you were declined or you had applied elsewhere and had some sort of rating. So that's something that's really important that we're looking at. And especially if you guys are in a residency program or going through training or fellowship, make sure that you investigate to see if you have a guaranteed standard issue disability insurance program set up through your university. And sometimes a lot of the advisors that operate these for the university, they have to kind of piggyback on the university size, but oftentimes they're not even supported by the university themselves. And so I encourage you guys to do a Google search on this. Sometimes HR is not going to know that it's even out there, but if we don't know that if you have a GSI available to you, sometimes if you apply elsewhere and we get some sort of adverse rating, then that can preclude you from being able to use one of these guaranteed issue policies that they don't actually require any health screening. So especially if you have some health concerns, make sure that we're looking for GSI policies. And if we don't have access to that, making sure that you have an advisor like us helping you to run a prelim for all the different companies. So before we can kind of know what to expect before we apply. So hopefully this gives you some good thoughts to be thinking about as you're in your quest of trying to figure out, do we really need disability insurance? And hopefully some of these questions and these statistics will help to enlighten your decision on that. And so thanks so much for hopping on today, and hope to see you in a new episode. And we hope that this has continued to help you to live more humble and quiet lives. Thanks so much.